Good morning and welcome to Herd Immunity, where wisdom is your best defense. Today I'd like to give you some information about my background and why it is that I feel capable of discussing COVID with you. I am a breast cancer surgeon. When I finished my fellowship at Memorial Sloan Kettering in 1995, I was recruited by Cancer Treatment Centers of America to create a breast service at a small hospital in New Jersey, which later became part of the largest healthcare system in the state, the Barnabas healthcare system. During that time and for the next 6 years, I practiced breast cancer surgery and was very grateful and blessed to have a robust, growing, and dynamic practice. In 2006, I was one of two people from the United States invited to participate in the first International Masters for Health Leadership at McGill University in Montreal. There were candidates from around the world who had risen to levels of leadership in various healthcare systems in many countries, and we were assembled to study together for 2 years in order to discover and mature in ways that would allow us to understand what is required to be a healthcare leader, how you understand a very complex system, how you assess and integrate vast amounts of data, how to navigate the systems. They're very different, almost within your town, let alone your state or the nation, the world. How do you collaborate across different stakeholder boundaries and work together cohesively to achieve a goal? And if you wanted to change something, how would you go about catalyzing change? During that period of time between 2006 and 2008, I was able to travel the world. I was invited by a member of the royal family of Kuwait to create a breast service in Kuwait. I was given, with two of my other colleagues, a grant from the World Health Organization to do mammogram screening in Uganda. And I was also allowed to work with one of my classmates who had recently emerged from the first SARS outbreak in 2003 and 4. He had been running the nursing service at a hospital in Toronto, which was inundated with SARS patients. So that was really my first introduction to SARS and an epidemic which threatened to become a pandemic, but fortunately was well controlled. In the middle of that program, I became aware of the existence of the breast cancer virus. This was news to me. It's a very interesting story. I spent the next 2 years researching the published literature, which goes back 100 years, on the subject of the breast cancer virus. And then I spent the next 6 years writing the first and only book on the subject. It's called The End of Breast Cancer: A Virus and the Hope for a Vaccine, and it's published by Skyhorse Publishing in New York. That was my second introduction to viruses, and it was a very deep, curbside fellowship, as it were, a self-imposed fellowship on the subject of tumor viruses, the breast cancer viruses, and viruses in general. During that time, I was also invited to become a member of the Leadership Council of the Harvard School of Public Health. And that was wonderful. Again, very, very dynamic, international, lots of terrific and really smart people. And a couple of years into my participation on the Leadership Council at Harvard, we were looking at an epidemic of Ebola in West Africa. And that was threatening to become a pandemic. One of my colleagues at the time, Joanne Liu, had just been made president of Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, and I was in touch with her. We were trying to raise awareness about what looked to be an uncontrollable outbreak of Ebola in West Africa. She was having trouble convincing the WHO that there was a problem in West Africa, and they were pretty much not impressed with anything she had to say until the first Ebola patient landed in the United States and another one landed in Europe, and all of a sudden the WHO got religion and everyone got religion, and they began to build Ebola units in New York City. Fortunately, we were able to control that outbreak. And again, here I was in the middle of understanding a new and dynamic emergence of a very threatening virus, which fortunately was put under control. And so, when in early January 2020, I heard the news about a novel SARS coronavirus erupting out of Wuhan, I paid close attention and made it my business to understand what was going on, and I've been paying close attention ever since. I have been fortunate enough to take care of over 10,000 women in my practice over the past 20-odd years, almost 30 years really. And whereas the need for breast cancer screening and diagnosing and treating breast cancer was not of paramount importance, taking care of my patients was, and I began to help them get the care that they needed, get the diagnosis they needed, if and when they came down with COVID. I'm very happy to say, through the grace of God, I did not lose a single patient. Now here we are, very much into the current SARS-CoV-2 pandemic, with iteration after iteration. I've been keeping up with it. I believe that I have been gifted with the ability to teach what can be complicated medical and scientific topics in such a way that the average person can understand them. I've been doing this with my 10,000 patients for 30 years, and I feel both gifted in being able to explain things that most people just like, I don't get that. I didn't do well in biology. I don't understand spike protein. And I'm really not interested because I don't even understand the vocabulary. To bring that home in such a way that you can understand it because you need to understand it. So those are my credentials, a little off the beaten track, but very much on the path to being able to understand the cause of the pandemic, the manifestations of the disease, the interventions that can help either prevent or treat the disease, and be able to explain to viewers every step of the way some of the very fundamental issues and vocabulary that are required to keep up with the crowd, because we are moving forward, and we are moving forward at quite a brisk pace, and things are changing all the time. So remember, the two best medicines are love and mercy. And until I see you again, let me just leave you with one story from today's liturgy. So it's the story of Mary Magdalene running to the tomb of Jesus. I believe she intended to anoint him or pray, whatever she was going to do. So she shows up on the morning of the third day. Early in the morning, it was still dark. And she's looking for Jesus, her Lord. And he's not there in the tomb. And there are two men there. And she's like, do you have any idea what they did with my Lord's body? Well, the priest, who did a magnificent job, Father Michael, a gifted homily today, full of grace. He said, as many people will say when they're talking on the subject, why did God choose Mary Magdalene, a fallen woman, to be the first person to know that Christ had risen, and then to be the apostle of the apostle, to go back and share the good news? And as I was sitting in the pew thinking, well, there's no doubt in my mind that Jesus has the big plan, God has the big plan. So it was God's intention for Mary to be the first person to know. But let the record show, Mary showed up for her part of the job. It was Mary who went to the tomb early in the morning, while it was still dark, looking to do whatever she felt needed to be done, and she was rewarded handsomely with that, although she was a bit confused, as we all are when we're given a gift we don't quite understand. But there you go. Until I see you again, God bless.